Welcome to a Thursday night edition of Taking It to the Know. I'm your host, Boston Jimmie, and tonight I've been trying to get this gentleman on for a while. Everybody's so busy in this industry, and I am so pleased we have a very special show with James Brown, the owner of Black Label Cigar Trading Company, the owner of Blackwork Studio, and the owner of Oveja Negra Cigar Factory down in Nicaragua. It's been a while to try to get James on, so we have him, and we got him only for an hour. They've got actually a tropical storm coming down on them right now, so hopefully this show can manage its way through. We're going to start with a little advertising segment.
From the valleys in Honduras to the heart of Louisiana, where excellence thrives, two legacies come together to harvest a new tradition. For many years, Honduras has been a symbol of quality and hard work, inspiring many achievements. At Bocock Brothers, we craft cigars that embody passion and precision, rooted in a commitment to excellence. From the tobacco leaves in the fields to crafting the cigars in the factory, we celebrate our partnership with LSU. Introducing the LSU Commemorative Cigar Collection. Each cigar a tribute to the spirit of excellence that defines both. Join us in this celebration, a symbol of pride, a mark of distinction, a taste of history, crafting excellence together.
And today's show is brought to you by Platinum Nova Cigars. Platinum Nova is a family-owned and operated premium cigar company. Only the highest vintage tobacco and the most skilled hand workmanship go into the making of each Platinum Nova cigar. This results in a timeless blend of art and craftsmanship. The Nova brand and the family's work are a tribute and an honor to their grandfather to always remember him and his infinite passion for the finest cigars. Their love for cigars started with their grandfather, a dedicated master blender and entrepreneur in the cigar industry. So the next time you're looking for that exquisite cigar experience, pick up a Platinum Nova. You can check them out at Platinum Nova Cigars, www.novacigar.com, and on their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter channels.
And today's show is brought to you by All Saints Cigars, a company founded in 2019 and headed up by industry veteran Mickey Pegg and his two friends, Martin Corboy, a successful restaurateur, and Frank Leo, an Air Force Academy graduate military veteran. As Mickey explains it, they were all sitting down, talking and smoking cigars, and finally they decided that they would do this thing together. It was time. Mickey said, I decided if I'm going to work hard at it, it should be something I love. Besides, a tough day with a cigar is better than a great day doing anything else. Soon after, they began the process of launching All Saints Cigars, jokingly referring to themselves as the Holy Trinity: St. Michael, St. Martin, and St. Francis. They chose for their logo the cross of St. James, the patron saint of Nicaragua, the country where their cigars would be produced. You can check out All Saints Cigars at www.allsaintscigars.com.
All right, let's bring in James right now. Brother James, how are you doing?
I'm good, man. How are you?
Good. Thank you for joining, taking the time out of your day. You got a tropical storm running down there, so hopefully we can make it through. Sorry about the little glitch in the beginning. And if you watch it, sometimes Zoom gets a little weird sometimes when it comes to going live. I don't see the exact response, and I don't know whether I'm actually broadcasting or not. So I have to do it a couple.
All good. Don't worry about it.
Here we are. God, man, it's been a while. I mean, we've spoken to each other in numerous PCAs, but I've been a while since I had tried to have you on the show. You're very busy, um, but over 10 years with Black Label Cigar
Yeah.
Co- coming up on 10 years with Blackwork Studio, Oveja Negro, the cigar factory itself. How do you feel?
Um, to be honest, it's a little surreal. Like it definitely for me doesn't feel like that long. In a lot of ways, it feels like, you know, we've worked really hard to get where we are, but on the other hand, it feels like we have so much more left to do. Um, so yeah, I mean, overall, it's great. I mean, this is a really, really tough industry, a really competitive industry, and I think for us to be where we are today is not necessarily you know what I would have anticipated when we first started out. So I mean, I think it's great that that we're here and we're doing what we're doing and have been able to accomplish what we have in those last 10 years.
If you go back over those 10 years and you think about how many total cigars you produced out of your factory, what would you say that number is?
Oh, that's tough. I mean, we started out when we opened the factory, it was a very different scenario than what it is today. We started in a very small space with two teams. Um, I remember our first shipment very clearly. We were super excited to be shipping like 10,000 cigars. Um, and fast forward to today, I mean, we roll about 80,000 cigars a month. We ship about 40 to 50,000 cigars a month. So, things have changed a lot in that time. So I don't know if I could put an exact number on it, but I would just say that our growth has been pretty substantial over the last 10 years.
It's phenomenal.
Yeah.
The growth has been phenomenal, and the consumer uh, is behind you. I can't think of anybody that's ever told me they didn't like something coming out of your factory. They, maybe somebody says it's not for them, but it's not something that was. I mean, your construction has always been spot on. I think you pride yourself in quality. I think you said once to me that it's you start as as it if we want to use the word boutique as whatever we want it to be, but small batch and keep that flowing regardless of how small or large that batch is. Keep those
Right.
processes the same, and
Right.
you've made that happen.
Yeah. I think it's a couple of things, in regards to that. Number one, like I am, you know, still 10 years in, very humbled by the amount of support that we get from our consumer base. It's like, um, I don't know, it's more than I could have ever anticipated. The amount of people that do go out and support our brands. And, for me as a cigar maker, it's kind of like, I always hope to just be in somebody's rotation. You know what I mean? Like if you smoke three or four brands, I just hope to be one of them. Um, but the amount of people that are just hardcore Oveja Negra and smoke everything we make, only want to smoke what we make. Like to see that response to what we're doing is just it's incredible. Like I said, it's really humbling for me. And I love that we started out doing something, I think, for the time that was very different. And I think that what we were trying to do was one of those things where, we weren't quite sure if people were really going to understand it, really latch onto it the way that we wanted them to. And I think that we've seen that what we did worked. And so for me, it's great. I love to see that. I love that, the brands that we put out change somebody's cigar experience, somebody's smoking experience, because for me as a cigar consumer, before I started doing what I'm doing, I didn't have that. I was kind of fumbling around with a few different brands and didn't really find the brand that spoke to me. And I think that when somebody finds the brand, they find the cigar that they can relate to and is their cigar, their brand, it changes it changes who you are as a cigar smoker. And so for me to be that for somebody else, I absolutely love it. Like it means everything to me as a cigar maker.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be, like you said, it's got to be humbling at the least. And
Yeah, for sure.
no, I'm sure you have people come wanting you to sign autographs and boxes. And, I mean,
Hmm.
what was the first, what went through your head the first time somebody came up to you and said, could you sign this box?
I mean, it's always been weird for me, and I mean, it's the type of thing where you know we came we came into cigars from a very different angle than most people, right? Like I had no inkling of what it was like to run a cigar brand. To I hadn't lived in the U.S. for well over a decade at that point. So I had nothing to do with the cigar industry in the States. I only knew what was happening in Nicaragua, Honduras, all of that. So this idea that brands were very much focused around a person was very new to me, and kind of unexpected. So I had never really thought of or anticipated having to kind of be the face of what we're doing. My thought was always like, the cigars kind of will speak for themselves, whatever. But that's just not what this industry is. It's a lot of FaceTime. It's a lot of, uh, people want to, at the end of the day, I'm putting my name on it. It's an extension of myself in terms of the artwork, the cigar. So I understand that people want to have that relation, you know, with me. So, but yeah, it's a very strange thing for me. It was very difficult in the beginning because I'm not an overly social person. Um, but at the end of the day, like anytime, somebody's excited about what we're doing, that it's great, So I love that people, anytime they're responding positively to what we're doing as a brand, as a factory, I love to be there and support that.
But I want to share off your website. I want to share the little video you have, which kind of tells the story of Oveja Negra and what it's all about. For anybody that doesn't know who James Brown is and this whole company, you might be living under a rock. I'm gonna take the rock off you if you don't know who this is. So I'm gonna just quickly share this. And I think it tells a great story. I think you did a great job on this little video here. So anybody who is a fan of yours looking at that has to be licking their chops because there's some amazing cigars in that video. Not to mention you have an aging. How many wheels do you have in your aging room?
Well, see, that's a good example of how we do things completely different. So if you notice our aging room, like we don't do any wheels. It's we do it very different. take on aging cigars and drying cigars. So we use what we call a cajon, which is basically like a cedar drawer. And so I wanted the aging room of the factory to be very much kind of like the centerpiece, the showpiece of the factory. I wanted it to have that kind of wine cellar aesthetic to it. But also from a functionality standpoint, um, you get a very different finished product when you take 400 robustos and fit them into a very small cedar drawer versus 100 cigars in a wheel.
Hmm.
So tobacco is very much like a sponge. It absorbs everything around it, even other tobacco. So like when you have a lot of cigars in a very tight confined space, you create a lot of interaction between those cigars. And so, yeah, we approach the aging room very differently than most people.
And then at the end, there's a
But
big crowd of all your workers.
yeah,
So compared to 10 years ago to now, how many workers? I mean, how you started with a couple of rollers, and where are you at now with
um,
roulette and
yeah. I mean, I
sorting?
think right now we're at about 80 people.
Wow.
So versus where we started, which was maybe like 7 to 8, something like that. Yeah. So yeah, we definitely have grown, and the thing that I love though is that a lot of the rollers, the teams that were featured in that video, have actually been with us since the beginning. So, a lot of our staff, all of our management staff, everybody that's in charge of, the wrapper department, the filler tobacco department, the packing department, all of these people have been with us since the beginning. So it's really awesome that, we've created this very, very tight bond, and almost a family scenario when it comes to the factory.
So when you look at this year, and you've come out with a lot of things this year, how many new blends or extensions did you come out with in 2024? Because there's a bunch of stuff that you've released.
In 2024, so the technically the new cigars we came out with were, at the trade show we launched Paper Crane for Blackwork Studios, Orthodox for Black Label, um, and then we did the Coffin Nails for Black Label, the Intergalactic Maduro that you're smoking now, the Event Horizon. Um,
Phenomenal.
what else? What else did we do? We did we did
Like the
a
Rorschach or something like that. There was what
no,
was
we did a new cigar for Hawaii for our field. We did the Hawaiian Tiger. We did another exclusive for Hogshead out of Virginia, which was an extension of the MBK line. So
that's a
yeah,
killer line. That's a killer.
yeah,
People like scramble for that.
yeah. So it's been good. I mean, it's like I said, it's great that we're this far along and what we've been doing, and I definitely don't feel like there's a shortage of ideas and things that I want to get out there. I kind of have this whole like backlog of blends, of ideas, of artwork, of all these different things that eventually will see the light of day. And it's just a matter of putting them out when it makes sense.
Yeah, I was going to ask you what keeps you up at night, but it sounds like you've got your dreams are already written down of what you want. So going forward, you have a
Yeah,
collection
I mean,
of stuff that
I
you're ready
feel
to do.
like I feel like at this point in my life, it's very interesting because for me, 12 months a year goes by like that because it's all just based around release after release after release. You know what I mean? So it's like not only am I normally working like a year plus, year and a half, 2 years in advance. We're working on ideas and concepts today already for 2027. Um, but it just goes by so fast. Once kind of the year starts, it's like, okay, first release, then PCA, then this, then that. So yeah, it goes really quick, but and it's
What
a lot. It's a lot for me as a cigar maker, but I love that. Like that's why I do it, right? Like I
Right.
always want to do something interesting and different and put something out there.
What is the difference for those that maybe don't know between Black Label Trading Company and Blackworks Studio? I mean, there's these two companies under you
Yeah.
that do different things. So maybe you can explain a little what the difference is between those two and how they
So
come to.
yeah, I think the most basic way to explain it is, the concept of Black Label when it came out was um this idea that, I didn't want to be just another guy with a cigar, right? Like so I didn't want to start with one cigar, like one blend or two blends, like so a lot went into the idea of we're going to develop this as a brand, right? So we're not going to launch with one SKU or two SKUs. We're launching with six SKUs, like, or six different lines, three SKUs in each line. Like we really wanted to make an impact. And we wanted Black Label to be, although it was boutiquey and a little bit edgy, especially for the time, like we wanted it to have a little bit of something for everybody, right? Like we wanted the Vitolas to be very approachable for most people, things like that. So the blends were designed around that concept. And then as we opened the factory, I started, you know, I treat the factory very much as kind of my studio space, right? Like it's where I want to be creative, the artistic, and so I saw the opportunity for a lot of cigars, a lot of blends. It didn't necessarily fit that Black Label idea, and I wanted to do kind of a smaller brand that really highlighted the artisanal qualities of cigar making. With things like the Killer Bee, the Hornet, the Tiger series. Really kind of showcase like what you can do with cigars, and how talented these people are that are making these cigars. And I wanted it to be kind of geared more towards the cigar nerd crowd. So when you look at Black Label versus Blackwork Studios, Blackwork Studios is very much kind of geared towards these cigar nerd type vitolas. You never see anything bigger than like a 50 ring gauge in Blackwork Studios. So there's a lot of weird sizes: Corona Largas, Corona Gordas, Petite Coronas, things like that. And so that's kind of the idea behind Blackworks, is where I can really kind of be creative. It's all just much smaller batch productions, and it's just kind of my playground a little bit. It's I can kind of be, with Black Label, I think it has a very specific feel, vibe, to it. Whereas with Blackworks, I have a little bit more freedom as a cigar maker to be as creative as I want to be, because there is no mold, there is nothing that kind of sets it up, into this framework. It can be whatever it needs to be. So it's a lot of fun for me.
So do you make your own molds for some of these interesting vitolas you have?
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean, even for with Black Label, with the new release of the morphine that's just coming out right now, I had this very specific idea of this petite perfecto that I wanted to do, and I wanted it very much to look like a moth chrysalis or cocoon, because it's kind of the theme with the morphine is the death head moth. So yeah, I mean we worked with the mold maker to make these the size it looks very much like what that would look like. And so yeah, it's kind of, I would say the creativity starts at the most basic level and goes from there. But every aspect of the cigar for me is important, and every aspect has to be interesting and unique. And so, yeah.
Now, when you have when you obviously are bringing in a lot of different leaf into your factory. What would you say the average age of the tobacco that ends up in a cigar is?
For us, it depends, but I would say, when you work with various filler tobaccos, just Nicaraguan filler tobaccos, for example, That can be anywhere between 18 to 24 months for the fermentation process. A lot of times we'll extend that, sometimes a little bit longer, depending on what it is. Like, for example, our Ometepe Ligeros, our Estelí Ligeros, we like to give a little bit more time, just to tone them down a little bit. And wrapper leaf, I mean, it can be anywhere from, Mexican San Andreas, which is a very quickly fermented leaf, which is about, 14 to 18 months around there, anywhere to certain broadleaf varietals can be multiple years.
Hmm.
So it just depends. But I always tell people that I'm very much a fan of young tobacco, right? Like, I like boldness, I like intensity, I like that kind of gritty, rough around the edges profile that a lot of Nicaraguan tobaccos have. So I always like to highlight that. And, when it comes to tobacco, realistically, at the end of the day, it's all about how you process it, how you ferment it, is going to give it the profile that you want. And so the way that we work with our tobacco is probably different than the way a lot of other factories work with their tobacco, but we're going for that very specific kind of bold intensity at the end of the day, not a soft, subtle, smooth profile, which you get from older tobaccos.
Hmm. Interesting, because I would
Mhm.
now I think about it, yeah, that's pretty much you definitely are edgy. And I'm a person that a lot of times sometimes the edgy is too bitey and that
Mhm.
turns me off, but yours haven't. So it's got,
Well,
how
I
you're
mean,
putting
yeah,
it together.
with that said, I mean, it has to be, perfect. It has to be exactly what we want it to be. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? And that's the thing is like, I tell people all the time, like, it's really easy to make a strong cigar. It's really difficult to make a strong cigar that's balanced, that has the flavor, the complexity, the layers to back up that strength. And so when we ferment our tobacco, when we do our processing, when I put a blend together, for me, that's always the focus is 100%. I never make a cigar for the sake of strength. I make a cigar for balance and complexity. And if strength comes as a result of that, so be it. Uh, but that's never the focus. That's never the goal. It's always just about, is it unique? Is it balanced? Does it make sense? And for me as a cigar maker, that's what I want. I want it to be unique in the sense that when you smoke a black label, you smoke a black works, you're not going to say, oh, that tastes like this or this other cigar that I had. I want it to be unique in that sense, but I want it to be flavorful. I want it to be balanced. I want it to be, complex. And that's my goal.
So we were talking pre before the show, they before you had the factory and all of that, you had still the company. So a couple years prior to that, what was it, 2012?
Uh, late 2012,
Yeah.
2013. Yeah.
So prior to that, you were saying you smoke cigars and you just didn't, you wanted to have something that really you could attach yourself to and others possibly could. When did you start smoking cigars prior to 2012?
I started smoking cigars very occasionally, kind of in my late teens, around 17, 18. I was a cigarette smoker since I was 13 years old. And in my early 20s, I decided that I wanted to move forward with my other passion at that time, which was wine. I decided to go to California, become a sommelier. And so at that point, I had to quit smoking cigarettes, right? Because, you need your palate to be the best it can be. And so, fast forward a couple of years as a sommelier, I was still smoking cigars occasionally, but I took a job with a restaurant in Tucson, Arizona called Anthony's in the Catalinas. And the owner of the restaurant also owned a chain of cigar stores in Tucson. Um, and so he kind of opened my eyes at that point to what cigars could really be. really kind of showed me what it was all about. Opened my eyes to a lot of different brands that I had no idea anything about. And that really kind of at that point piqued my interest, my curiosity. Um, and then, fast forward many years later, I met Angela, my wife. We ended up leaving the US right after we got married. And, we've been gone 22 years now. But up until about 2009, I was a very, very casual smoker. We had lived in a lot of different parts of the world, didn't necessarily always have access to cigars. The ones we did have access to were nothing, really to talk about or get excited about. And we ended up owning a travel company that focused on trips throughout Central America. We were living in Guatemala at the time. And as we started this company, a lot of our clients were cigar smokers as well and interested in cigar factories. And so we started including Estelí. And so for me, tobacco became very much like wine, right? Like what I loved about wine was this idea that you can take something as simple as a grapevine, but when you grow it in this place and you treat it this way and you do this and do that, you can end up with this incredible bottle of wine. And I saw the same thing with tobacco. It's like, okay, it's essentially a weed. It will literally grow anywhere. But when you grow it here and you treat it this way and you ferment it like this and do this, you end up with this incredible end result in a cigar. And so that to me was always fascinating. And, the more time I got to spend in Nicaragua, the more I kind of really got into, the growing aspect, the manufacturing aspect, all of that, and really started to fall in love with the idea of cigars and tobacco. But the one thing that I noticed that stood out the most was there was a really big disconnect between the tobacco that I was smoking in Nicaragua and the cigars that I was randomly getting here and there in the States from Nicaragua. So I felt like the cigars that I were getting were kind of underwhelming in the sense that, they were all very medium and they were all very jalapa forward. And I felt like I had smoked that cigar multiple times before, and so I was, I asked myself, like, why is nobody highlighting what I love about this Nicaraguan tobacco, which is this boldness, this intensity, this, grittiness that it has. And so that's really what kind of sparked the idea. And, I took my time learning as much as I could about tobacco, about cigar blending. At that time, I was working with a guy who was running one of the factories that we would go to on our tours. And he kind of, thankfully for no reason, decided that he was going to let me kind of learn as much as I wanted to learn and, spend my time with him and learn everything I could about it. And so this was probably about 3 or 4 years before we started Black Label, and I started practicing blending cigars. I started making cigars for our travel company. The people on the tours really fell in love with the product. Like, the cigar's great. Like, how do we get this? Whatever. And so that kind of sparked the idea that, okay, well, maybe I'm good at this. Like, maybe this could be something, maybe people do want what I want out of, Nicaraguan cigars. And so Black Label just kind of slowly grew out of that. I think that I went from cigars being a very kind of every so often part of my life to being, everything in my life. So
from the valleys in Honduras to the heart of Louisiana, where excellence thrives, two legacies come together to harvest a new tradition. For many years, Honduras has been a symbol of quality and hard work, inspiring many achievements. At Bocock Brothers, we craft cigars that embody passion and precision, rooted in a commitment to excellence. From the tobacco leaves in the fields to crafting the cigars in the factory, we celebrate our partnership with LSU. Introducing the LSU Commemorative Cigar Collection. Each cigar a tribute to the spirit of excellence that defines both. Join us in this celebration, a symbol of pride, a mark of distinction, a taste of history, crafting excellence together.
And today's show is brought to you by Platinum Nova Cigars. Platinum Nova is a family-owned and operated premium cigar company. Only the highest vintage tobacco and the most skilled hand workmanship go into the making of each Platinum Nova cigar. This results in a timeless blend of art and craftsmanship. The Nova brand and the family's work are a tribute and an honor to their grandfather to always remember him and his infinite passion for the finest cigars. Their love for cigars started with their grandfather, a dedicated master blender and entrepreneur in the cigar industry. So the next time you're looking for that exquisite cigar experience, pick up a Platinum Nova. You could check them out at Platinum Nova Cigars, www.novacigar.com, and on their Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter channels.
And today's show is brought to you by All Saints Cigars, a company founded in 2019 and headed up by industry veteran Mickey Pegg and his two friends, Martin Corboy, a successful restaurateur, and Frank Leo, an Air Force Academy graduate military veteran. As Mickey explains it, they were all sitting down, talking and smoking cigars, and finally they decided that they would do this thing together. It was time. Mickey said, I decided if I'm going to work hard at it, it should be something I love. Besides, a tough day with a cigar is better than a great day doing anything else. Soon after, they began the process of launching All Saints Cigars, jokingly referring to themselves as the Holy Trinity, St. Michael, St. Martin, and St. Francis. They chose for their logo the cross of St. James, the patron saint of Nicaragua, the country where their cigars would be produced. You can check out All Saints Cigars at www.allsaintscigars.com.
So when you put your hand to blending for the first time, all right, was the first blend that you played with solid, or did you learn a few lessons along that way?
No, I learned a lot of lessons, and I approached tobacco very much the same way that I approached what I had learned, in my training to become a sommelier. So, when you become a sommelier, you get what's called an eau de vie kit, right? Like, and it's these vials of essences of
Right.
everything you can think of. You know what I mean? And it's like you think you know what cherries smell like and cherries taste like, but you don't until you really, try these individual vials of the essence of all of these different things. And so I knew I had to kind of do the same thing with tobacco. So I knew that, I needed to be able to train my palate. And so for a long time, I mean, every time I wanted a cigar, I would smoke what we call peritos, which is individual filler tobaccos, right? So,
Little
and
Fumi.
yeah, for example, like Jalapa Seco, like I would smoke Jalapa Seco until I knew it inside and out. And, you want to get to the point where your palate is trained to where it's like when you think about a banana, you can taste a banana. So I had to get that way with tobacco. When I think about, Viso Ometepe, I have to be able to taste Viso Ometepe. Like I have to know it. And so I did that for a very long time before I started to try to actually put these things together and blend a cigar. And there are a lot of misses in the early days, but what grew out of that is basically the core line for Black Label came from the group of cigars that I was making early on for our travel company. So Last Rites is pretty much the first cigar that I blended on my own for my palate, and was very proud of that. Like this is the cigar that kind of represents me as a person, as a cigar maker. And so that was a very early cigar for me. And so, yeah, it all kind of stemmed from that. Like,
Now, one of the hardest things of blending, um, I would have, I've had enough conversation with people that I could probably speak with authority on this. Is A is getting the flavors right, and the flavors really are going to marry, and you gotta think about how they're going to marry in the end result because you really don't know that, but you have a good inkling because you played with the stuff before. But it's also about blending it for proper combustion. And you've done an awesome job because your cigars burn beautifully. You don't get these off burns. You don't get these major problems that I get with other cigars where I'm getting wonky burns. I'm touching it up. The flavor could be there, but it's just not combusting right between the binder,
mhm.
the filler, and the wrapper. How hard was that to get your head around? The leaf, hey, leaf, this is my spice. I love this and I love this and I put this, I put this. But then, oh my God, that's not going to work because it's not going to combust right. How hard was that?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for the cigars that we make, it's the hardest aspect. And what I have to deal with as a cigar maker is sometimes the most difficult because you look at cigars like morphine, for example, which I'm smoking now. Like morphine is essentially a full Ligero leaf cigar with a Viso cut wrapper and a Ligero cut wrapper, dual wrappers on it, right? None of those tobaccos like to burn, right? So it's a very delicate balance where, I tell people a lot, like when we do our blending seminars at the factory and things, like, we use specific tobaccos for very specific reasons. A lot of the Seco tobaccos that we use, for example, we don't use for flavor components in our cigars. They're purely there for combustion purposes. Like we don't use any Seco cut wrapper leaf. All of our wrappers are Viso or Ligero cut wrappers. So they're
Really?
thicker, they're heavier, higher oil content, denser. So our binders, we tend to use very thin Seco cut binders, very delicate binders, because we have to have something really thin on the underside of that wrapper that's going to keep combustion going.
Hmm.
So it is I would say specifically for us, for our factory, for the cigars that we make, it is something that is at top of mind always, just due to the nature of the cigars that we make, the style of cigars, and those heavy tobaccos that we use. So yeah, it's a difficult thing, and like you said, like it's not putting a blend together is not always about like okay, it tastes good, but
Right.
the cigar it has to perform, right? Like it has to. And I think the other aspect of it is that the tobacco has to be fermented properly for the right amount of time. Under fermented tobacco, whether it's filler tobacco, whether it's wrapper leaf, is not going to burn properly. If the oil content is too high, it's literally just not going to burn. And so, essentially, what it comes down to when it comes to making a good cigar, a great cigar, a cigar that smokes well, it's time, and you can't cut corners when it comes to time. You can't rush it. It is what it is, and a lot of times, our sales team, our sales manager, you know, they may not like it because we like to stick to a schedule, but the reality is the cigars ship when they're ready, and you just can't rush it. Like if you rush it, that's when you run into problems, and that's what we're all about. Is like you know, it's quality over quantity, and we take our time with everything. And when it's ready, it's ready.
And that's the key to any good product is take your time, do it right, do it in
Yeah.
quality. People keep coming back. When you look at the aging room, how long do you normally have cigars in the aging room? I know it varies, but what's your general goal in
Yeah, it varies. I mean, I would say that most of our like, for example, like a light wrapper cigar, which I would say like our royalty, for example, which is a Ecuadorian Corojo wrapper, thinner wrapper, lighter wrapper, porcelain, which is a Connecticut, the Rorschach series, which are our lighter wrappers, lighter fillers. Those cigars on average take around 90 days.
Okay.
So that's like our bare minimum. Because in reality, we call it an aging room, but really what it is it's a drying room,
It's
right? Like
drying, it's breathing, it's
right, we're,
exhaling all the
yeah,
remaining
yeah, yeah.
impurities and
Yeah. So, I mean, we're trying to take that cigar from a semi-wet state off the rolling table to a dry state for packing and shipping and smoking. So 90 days is kind of around the right time for those cigars. When it comes to everything else, last rites is anywhere from 4 to 5 months. Uh, Things with heavier wrappers, for example, like the Bishop's Blend, which is a Lajero cut Ecuadorian Maduro wrapper, a very thick, dense wrapper. Things like the Hornet, which is a thick, heavy wrapper. Those kind of take as much time as they need to. So Morphine, Bishop, I think, Nocturne, those cigars take the longest. And that's anywhere between like this year's Bishop, I think was like 7.5 months, almost eight
wow.
months.
Wow.
Um, and at the end of the day, it's just I want the cigar to be where I want it to be when it ships. I'm very much like I said, I like young tobacco, I like young cigars. So when that cigar hits a retailer's shelf, that's when I personally think it's smoking the way that it needs to be, and I want you to experience it that way. And so at that point is when I deem it ready to ship. For me, it has obviously you don't want the cigar to be too humid, but at a certain point, the humidity level in that cigar has been down for a long time. It's just about the flavor and the complexity and how it's smoking. I want it to be a very specific way, and that sometimes takes a long time.
Now, a lot of people enjoy aging their cigars beyond what you've done,
Mhm.
right? So you get them, you buy a box, you smoke a couple, maybe you don't even smoke any. You stick them in your humidor and you let them sit there for a while.
Right.
Um, with that understood, of your line of cigars, and I'm sure you've got a bunch of ones that have been hanging around that you've released years ago, you personally own. Which one would you say aged the best?
Well, it's kind of funny because it's an interesting question because I tell people all the time, like, I don't like an aged cigar. It's just me. I like it, when it's young
Like
and
it
more
young.
intense, more interesting, but with that said, I would say that even though that's not my preference, I would say that we as a factory, as a brand, make cigars that are built for aging,
Okay.
right? So, when they are young, they have enough there. They have enough intensity. They have enough oil content that they can actually stand the test of time, I would say, more than a lot of other products out there. Um, but, things like what did I smoke recently? Like the Nocturne. I think the last time we did the Nocturne was like 2019.
Yeah, it was like 5 years ago.
And I mean, I pulled one of those out of the aging room like a week or two ago, and it still definitely had a lot going on. So I would say, things that it tend to be a little bit more intense up front, like Nocturne, Morphine, Bishop's Blend for sure. Um, Things in Blackworks, like somebody recently at an event gave me a Syndustry, which we haven't done since 2015 or 16. And I was pleasantly surprised with how that cigar has held up over time. So yeah, I mean, I think that it's one of those things as personal preference, but I always warn people. Once again, it kind of comes back to like wine, right? Like, with my wine collection, I know that there are certain things that need a certain amount of time. And at that point, when it's good, right? And everything's downhill from there. So with cigars, it's the same. I tell people all the time, like a tobacco leaf, once it's fermented, is very much like when a leaf falls out of the tree in your yard, right? It's going to be green, it's going to turn yellow, it's going to turn brown, and eventually it's just going to kind of dissipate. So once a cigar is, the leaf is fermented, it's rolled into a cigar, it's in a constant state of breaking down. What that means is the oil content in that leaf is always dissipating, always breaking down. And as the oil content goes away from the tobacco, you're losing flavor, you're losing intensity, you're losing nicotine. And so I tell people, like, if you smoke this cigar today and you love it today, then don't wait a year to smoke the rest of them, because it's not going to be the same cigar,
Right.
right? It's going to keep breaking down. So, I mean, that's kind of the thing with people that age cigars is, I know people that smoke a cigar, they love it, they buy boxes of it and they hold on to it, and then they go back to it a year or two later, and it's not the same cigar,
Yeah.
So at
I've
the end of the
heard.
day, like, this isn't good for anything except lighting on fire and smoking, right? Other than that, it's a paperweight, right? Like, I don't know, like, don't buy cigars to look at them. Just smoke them. If you love
So,
it today, smoke it today.
so if you were to if you were in the game of aging the cigar, just put it out there. What would you say based on the oil, because of the oil issue, like you mentioned? I think that's a very important point to bring up. The proper humidity and temperature. Should you be doing a 77 rule, or you should be doing it down lower temperature, lower humidity, lower temperature, higher humidity?
I mean, I think you always want to be lower temperature, for the sake of, God forbid you ever have an issue with a beetle or anything like that. So you definitely want to be a lower temperature just so you don't have to think about that. In terms of humidity, humidity is a really interesting thing when it comes to cigars, because I think there's a lot of misnomers out there about humidity. So I think that you should store your cigars at kind of high 60s, you know, right around there. And that's a good humidity
I'm
for
at
storing.
65. I'm at six. Mine's
Yeah.
65 is where I put them.
Yeah. And that's, I walk into retailers sometimes and they're in the 70s. You know what I mean? And in reality, like, that's okay. But there's a difference between humidity levels that are good for storing cigars and humidity levels that are good for smoking cigars, right? So I feel like it's like the old adage when it comes to wine. Like, people say people drink their whites too cold and their reds too hot. I think most people smoke their cigars way too humid, because your cigar that's been at 68 to 70% humidity for storage is not necessarily a good humidity level for smoking.
Right.
So I tell people all the time, like, if you can think about what you want to smoke tomorrow or the next day, take those cigars, dry box them in an empty cigar box, like, let the humidity level go down and see if you get a better smoking experience. For me, I like to smoke my cigars probably much drier than most people would think to smoke.
Yeah, I mean, I have people I know that go as far down as 62, 61. And I always felt that if an industry like a factory, brand owner, when you package your cigars in a box, it would be a very cool concept that from you, the creator of that blend, put on the box, best smoked at this. That's where you feel that cigar is representing what you want it to be. Best smoked at 63 degrees. I mean, 63% humidity, right? Versus another one, maybe say, you know what, this one is actually better, a little bit high humidity. This one's better, lower humidity. Nobody's ever done this, right?
Right.
And you get all, and like you say, you get all different kinds of responses. You get different things. Obviously, people like me review cigars. You get different results. I could look at reviews, and some people are burning weird, and it's like, mine's not. It's like, well, why is that? I've never had a problem with this, but they have problems. Like, where were you storing them at? I
Yeah.
asked them. It's like, they're storing them at 70. I said, bring it down. Okay, bring it down, because the cigar is going to burn better at a slightly lower humidity than at
Right.
a higher. Because because let's be real, when you that you're familiar with Cigar Medics, the guy that makes the humidimeter.
Yeah.
Okay, so he told me, okay, once to do an experiment, and it's interesting because he goes, check that humidification factor before you smoke it, before you light it up. All right, you stab it, you're getting, let's say he's giving you a reading of 68, 67, right? Now light it up and stab the cigar. He goes, just try a cigar that you don't want to smoke the whole thing, he says, but you stab the cigar and you'll find out that that cigar in the filler and all of that will ratchet up to like 80% humidity because the heat activates all those water molecules
Right.
and the whole cigar gets moist inside. So
Yep.
when you say you're going to store the cigars at this rate, I said, but yeah, it's still going to go up. And he would always tell me, he says, check it out. And he was absolutely right. I was like, oh, that's a lesson learned, right? So
No,
if you're
I mean,
storing it too
yeah,
high, it's going to just accelerate that even more. And that's where you
absolutely.
get burn problems.
Yeah, and that's what I always tell people too. Like people will ask me about, transitions in cigars, right? The first third, second third, final third. And I always tell them, like, as a cigar maker, I that has nothing to do with me,
Right.
right? Like what happens is when you light a cigar, that first half inch, quarter inch is going to be the driest state that cigar's in through your entire smoking experience,
Right.
right? So that's going to be the truest representation of the blend. After that point, you start pulling hot, humid air through it. You're rehydrating the tobacco, which changes the burn rate. And burn rate dictates everything when it comes to the flavor of a cigar. So as that cigar gets more and more humid as you smoke it, you're slowing the burn rate. It's burning hotter. It's burning more intense. Changes the profile of the cigar. Changes the flavors of the cigar. So humidity is everything when it comes to smoking a cigar. And I'll flip the tables on you a little bit as a cigar reviewer. What I would like to see from a cigar reviewer is, where did you smoke it? Like, were you in a lounge? What's the ambient
Oh,
humidity?
yeah,
What
because
humidity was the cigar stored at? Like, what
so
humidity was it when you know what I mean? Because
I don't
in
put
re
that
in
over
reality, that
abs
changes so much about the
absolutely.
cigar.
And I don't put that in my reviews, but maybe I should because and I did talk about it a number of years ago. When I review a cigar, my cigar comes out of my controlled humidor. So like I said, 65% and about 69 degrees Fahrenheit. That's what my cigars are stored at. I take it out of there to review it. I'm reviewing that cigar at 11 o'clock in the morning. Now, why 11 o'clock, people ask? I said, because I've already had breakfast. I can judge strength. I already had my 2 cups of coffee because I got to wake up, right? I have a bottle of water with me when I review it. So I'm not drinking anything else but water when I do that. My lounge has a split AC system in here. So my lounge in my garage is at 68 degrees. Okay. Always. All right. So, and it's blowing in kind of dry air, but I don't know what the exact humidity is in here, but it's
Yeah,
it's at a controlled environment. Because as an engineer, when I
right,
created this way of doing it, I said I have to have every cigar has to be under the same microscope. Because if I did yours in a dry box over here or one of my desktop humidors, and then somebody else has come out here, they're different environments. And I said,
right,
no, I can't have that. It's got to be consistent. And then it is what it is at that point because
right.
somebody says, well, it's burning wonky because I said no, because the other cigar I smoked out of there didn't have that problem. Okay, because it's a controlled system. So you're
Yeah,
right. It would be fun to have everybody say what their environments was, what their
right.
storage
Yeah,
was.
I mean, because for me, I won't mention any names, but when I see the photo of the cigar review and somebody's outside, It's like, come on,
Do
man. Like, you
it.
can't, like,
And
no,
do it.
like, I don't
You
want to
got
hear it.
wind. Even
Yeah, whatever.
the slightest breeze outside
Yeah.
affect the burn.
No, I mean, everybody's got access to a lounge, right? So go to at least what is seemingly a controlled environment and give the cigar the best chance possible. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like, think about the humidity, think about where you're smoking it, and, you know,
So, couple of comments in the audience. Chris Colter says more deliverance nocturnes. Um,
it's funny. I hear that more than I can even tell you. But the funny thing is, the Nocturne is the only series of cigars that we've ever put out, like in a full run of figurados, right? So it's a Perfecto, it's what we call a long Solomon, and then a short Solomon. All completely unique sizes to us in terms of the molds and everything. When the last Nocturne release, which like I said, I think was 2019, some of those cigars we couldn't give away. You know what I mean? It's like people are like, "Oh man, I don't know what to do with this thing. Like it's a weird size, whatever." And but it's funny how much I hear like everybody's like, "That's my favorite cigar." And I'm like, "No, it isn't. Where were you in 2019?" Like,
yeah, right.
because that's
Do the
like,
numbers show it, right?
yeah, right, right. But I will say that to all the Nocturne fans out there, Nocturne will be coming back um, very soon, so they can rest easy. It'll be back.
Bruce Stark says, I told my daughter when I die, I want a BLTC last rite salvation and redemption in the crematorium when I go. If I'm going up in smoke, it's going to be good smoke. So
Very
maybe
nice.
we'll coordinate with some crematoriums in the future as we get older here. Uh,
Yeah.
okay, so it's kind of main comments there. Um, Mike Montalbano says juice is worth the squeeze. Absolutely, man. You got to take the time. Do what you got to go do.
Yeah.
All right, so we're getting on the alley here. I know you got a little limited time. I just want to, turn the script a little bit and talk about some personal things. How did you and Angela get together?
We actually met on a blind date. So yeah, I mean it's looking back, it feels like it's kind of a crazy story. So I mean we were both in the wine industry at the time. Um it's kind of weird because I had been working at a restaurant in Arizona. I'm originally from Austin, Texas. She's from Houston, Texas. I hadn't lived in Austin for a while. She had been living in California. Um, but anyway, I had a job opportunity back in Austin. She got a job opportunity back in Austin. We literally moved back to Austin within the same week of each other. And her job opportunity, strangely enough, was in the wine business, which she had never worked in before. And we got set up by a mutual friend on a blind date. And within 3 months, we were engaged, and another 3 months, we were married. And
Wow.
um, we went on our honeymoon to Mexico and never went back. So, yeah, and that was 22 years ago.
So how do you explain to me how, as an American, how you can move to somewhere like Mexico or Nicaragua and not have to leave in 90 days?
So we were at that point. We I had been investing in. I was part of a wine importation company, um, a lot separate from what I was doing as a job in the wine industry at that time. And our importation company was really taking off, and we didn't really know what we wanted to do once we got married. We were just kind of like, I don't know. We felt kind of done with the States, done with kind of the rat race or whatever. And, when we were in Mexico, we were just kind of like, well, this is great. Like, I don't like, why can't we just be here? You know what I mean? And, we're both very capable people and have a lot of ideas. And so I ended up selling my portion of the company I was involved in, and we sold all of our stuff and decided just to open a business in Mexico. And we got residency permits and ended up being there for about close to 5 years.
Hmm.
Um, and yeah, we've just, I think that we're both the kind of people that always just kind of go for it, which I think is great that, we're both like that. We both kind of evaluate risk the same way. For me, at the end of the day, it's always kind of like, well, what's the worst thing that can happen, right? Like, I got to go back to the real world and get a job or whatever. Like, so that was always our attitude, is like, well, we'll never know unless we try. And that led to, two businesses that we had in Mexico, to us going to West Africa, opening businesses there, then to Denver, then to Guatemala, then to, Nicaragua. So, yeah, I mean, the cigar business for us was just another one of those kind of opportunities where it was like, well, I, what's the worst that could happen? You know what I mean? Like, let's just go for it. And, thankfully here we are, 12 years later, and it's for us both together. I think it's great because this is like Nicaragua is the one place that we've been that we feel like we want to keep our roots, and the cigar industry is the one business that we've had over the last 22 years that we feel solely invested in, and this is it. This is what we want to do. Like, I think we finally have found our thing, and it's this. And so that's a great feeling for us.
So you have full residency now in Nicaragua, or is it still under a investment business residency kind of thing?
Yeah, it's with the business. Yeah.
Okay. So as long as you're investing in it, they're happy to have you hanging around.
Yeah. Yeah, we do our part. Yeah.
Exactly. Um, Children?
Yeah, so we have one son who's about to turn 18. He's had a very interesting life. He was born in Ghana in West Africa. But so he's lived there. He's lived in Guatemala. He's lived in Nicaragua. So, I mean, he's really spent the majority of his childhood in Latin America growing up. So he speaks fluent Spanish. He absolutely loves Nicaragua. He's a big surfer, and where we live in San Juan del Sur is, you know, people come from all over the world to surf here. So he's very happy in that regard that he gets to go surf some of the best waves every day. And
Wow.
yeah, it's an interesting time for us, because as I said, he's about to be 18 and figure out what he wants to do, with his life and all of that. So it's yeah, it's been a lot of fun, and seeing his development, in this environment. And I think the thing for me that I'm always happy about is, obviously we go back and forth to the States a lot for business, for family, for all of that. And we kind of felt like growing up at some point he might be like, why don't we live in the US? Like, I want to live in the US, like all of that. And it's never been that way. Like, he's always ready to go home. He loves Nicaragua. He wants to stay in Nicaragua. Um, so that's been really, really cool to see. And the fact that he gets it. He understands why we're here. He understands why it's different. Um, he has started smoking cigars and become more interested in what it is we do. We've taken him to the trade show a couple times. We've taken him to Intertobac in Germany a couple of times. So he started out kind of understanding the manufacturing side, growing up in a cigar factory and all of that. And now he's met all of our sales team in the US and all of that. And so he's seen kind of the full big picture of what it is we do. So selfishly, I would love if he wanted to be involved in cigars in some way, but we'll see.
Sounds like if you were to groom him for the business, you started him with giving him a broom and sweep up the clippings, and he'll learn everything about it from soup to nuts, from seed to palate, all the
Right.
things that you have to do. And
Right.
he's got two of the best teachers in the world.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, I tell them all the time. I mean, look, to be an American that's grown up in Nicaragua, that's grown up in a cigar factory, that knows all the people, that has all the connections, that speaks fluent Spanish. I mean, this is a very rare thing,
Oh yeah.
Like, I mean, so, but we'll see. I don't want to push him in any direction, but
So you have
like I,
college aspirations?
um, I don't know. I mean, it's hard because in one instance, it's for us as parents, it's difficult to tell him, you should go back to the States and do this and do that when, we've been gone for so long
Well,
and don't want to go back. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like it's hard to sell that, but I think in reality, it's one of those things where it's like, okay, you want to do this, then these are the steps to get you there.
right.
And whatever that entails, that entails. So there's no shortcuts. If it means you got to go to the States and go to school, or go to Europe and go to school, whatever it is, so I don't
Encourage,
know. It's
support, whatever they
right.
want to do. I mean, that's
Yeah.
how I raised my kids. I said, I'm not going to tell you what to do.
No,
I
I mean, at the end of the day, you just want them to be happy and
right.
find their way and, so yeah, we'll
There's
see
always an
how it
open
goes.
door if they need to come home. If you
Right.
like, that didn't work out, Dad. Well, okay, come on back home. We'll deal with
Yeah.
it. So,
Yeah. And Angela and I always joke because it's kind of like we always thought, you know, okay, he's going to turn 18, he's going to go, he's going to do this or that or whatever it is. And now as it gets closer, we're more like, well, maybe we'll take the Latin American approach, which is, you just live at home until you get married and it's fine, so yeah, it's as a parent, it's always hard to let
careful
go.
with
So
that
we'll
because
see.
they may
Yeah.
be living at home to 35 years old.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, the door's open. I got a room and I got a bed and I got food. Life is good. So,
Yeah.
um, we're coming up on the 8:15. I don't want to hold you back. I know you
Yeah.
have things to do. I do appreciate you taking your time out today. I know we've been trying to connect like this for a long time. One
Yeah.
last thing I want to mention is you obviously you're going to be a PCA in New Orleans. Okay. Can we expect something new from you at PCA or an extension? What do
Oh
we?
yeah, always. I mean, yeah, I mean, we always like to do something really cool for PCA. You know, People say a lot of different things, say what you will about it in the industry or whatever. I'm always a big supporter of PCA. I think it's great for a lot of reasons. And yeah, to show kind of appreciation for the retailers that do take their time to come there. We always like to showcase something new and cool that's a PCA exclusive. So yeah, with it being the 10-year anniversary of Blackwork Studios, I will say that you can expect a lot of really cool stuff to come out in 2025 for Blackworks, and we'll be launching the first thing at PCA in New Orleans.
Looking forward to it. All
Yeah,
right, with that, I'm going to give you the last word.
sure. Well, as always, I appreciate you having me on, and supporting us like you do with your reviews, and it really means a lot. And to all the consumers out there watching, like I said, thank you guys for supporting us and understanding what we do. And it really does mean a lot to us. And I try to get out on the road and get to retailers and meet consumers as much as I can, because it really is important to me and important to all of us involved in our business. And I think we represent a really unique and interesting segment of the cigar industry, and not only us but the consumers as well. And it's nice to see that continue to grow and see consumers continue to change. And so that's always awesome for me. And the amount of guys out there that are putting a cigar, a black label or a black work cigar in their friend's hand, and kind of spreading the word. Like that's always awesome. And, obviously thank you to all of our retailers that, understand what we do as well and promote our brands. And, it really means a lot. So looking forward to the next 10 years.
There you go. All right. Well, I want to thank you again. I want to thank the sponsors that sponsor me. Without them, it's always a little harder to do. All the viewers here in the future, thank you for joining. And don't forget, this will be up on the YouTube channel in a week from now. So check it out, and it'll be a post on that in case you missed this. You're probably hearing this afterwards. So there you go. James, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure, and I hope to see you at PCA, and we're gonna have some fun.
Sounds good, man. Thank you.
All right, man.